Well, if this isn't an example of market selection at work, I don't know what is. In a previous video, I threw in this image of an emergency bug-out bag, designed off the one I've personally made for myself, as I didn't think the subject warranted its own dedicated script. However, I've chosen to read the fact that more people commented on it than the actual subject of that video as an electoral barometer, and so here we are. Now, I was originally going to call this something clickbaity, like how to make the ultimate survival bag. But apart from not wanting to make a carbon copy of literally every other topical video on the internet, the simple reality is that the best way of doing or making anything is the way that achieves the best results most reliably. So it seems to me that a more productive offering would be a general design template rather than a hard and fast instructional mold. As I've said before, nature is Machiavellian. It doesn't care how you succeed, just that you do. Remember, survival isn't about being the best there ever was. It's about being consistently good enough to meet the needs of the moment. And there's no such thing as a fiat calorie. Basically, these are the sorts of things you would want readily accessible and portable should your current living situation suddenly and inexplicably become untenable for whatever reason. Now, having said that, the first thing I would do is point you towards my 10 commandments of engineering, as well as my rules of nature. I won't waste yours or my time reading them out, as they're fairly self-explanatory. But you can pause and do so at your own discretion, keeping in mind the old Boy Scout expression, ounces turn into pounds, and pounds turn into pain. Of course, there's an equal and opposite turn of phrase. It's better to have and not need than to need and not have. Ultimately, where precisely lies the difference must be determined by the individual whose life depends on threading that needle. But if you take only one thing away from this video, let it be this. There is no such thing as perfect. And there's no such thing as foolproof. Everything will break, every plan will fail, everything that can go wrong will. So don't intend to rely on anything except your own hands and wits, and never put all your eggs into any one basket, no matter how secure. Now, while I could just leave this there and call it good, that would just be a lazy excuse to farm views, so I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to combine those design principles with my original Budget MacGyver kit, whose premise was that of a simple portable box filled with all the essential tools to solve most common everyday issues. The idea is that each item, including the container itself, must be relatively inexpensive, readily sourceable from a common local retail store, has a variety of potential uses, and the whole kit is both flexible and scalable, meaning it can be bulked up or culled back depending on an individual's specific needs. Now, again, I could just leave this there like I did last time. However, though the circumstances may vary, the bare necessities remain common across all humanity. So, in the interest of not using your precious time to say a whole lot of nothing, I'll instead go over what I consider to be the most essential basics of any good disaster preparedness pack. First, and most obviously, food and water. Obviously, actual ration packs like these, sold on Amazon for around $20 to $30 a box, are always a good fail-safe. However, if you're extremely tight on budget, or if you just prefer not to subsist on something that looks and tastes like melted plastic wrap, you can always keep a vacuum-sealed package of jerky with some honey on hand instead. The honey can also serve as an antibacterial agent for wounds, should the need arise, as could salt and/or vinegar. As for water, I'd personally recommend investing in one of these leather water skins, since they can be rolled up and stowed in a pocket when not in use. More, the leather cover makes them more resistant to puncture, and the shoulder strap makes them less of a hassle to refill than a bladder. But at the end of the day, I should emphasize that this is just my own personal preference. Any device that can reliably store liquid will work for the job. Even a Ziploc bag could be used in a pinch, though if you have a choice, I'd still go with the former. However, speaking of storage, I also can't recommend enough that you stick a handful of resealable airtight bags, either vacuum seal or Ziploc, into your pack, as these can store everything from food to medicine to water purification tablets to even a spare set of underwear and socks, which I'd also strongly suggest you bring, as there's very few things in life that suck more than trudging around in the wilderness in dirty or wet linens. Ask me how I know. Although one of those few things would easily be a splinter, a hangnail, an ingrown hair, or a bad tooth. Therefore, another essential part of a preparedness package: toiletries. Go to the travel section of your local supermarket and you can find everything from pocket toothbrushes and toothpaste to pocket-sized Kleenex packets, wet wipes, sanitizer bottles, pocket mirrors, Q-tips, nail clippers, tweezers, combs, etc. and so on, all of which have regular life applications as well, so you don't have to feel like you're investing time and money in a bunch of dead drawer filler. Or you can just as easily go online and buy a pre-made travel grooming kit, though in my experience these tend to come packed with a lot of unnecessary fluff and garnish, so I'd personally say to just go to the store and pack it yourself for best results. After all, you know your needs and preferences better than anyone else. I realize this all sounds silly given the context, but keeping yourself clean and well-groomed is just as vital as keeping fed and hydrated, as infections can and will make a cadaver out of you just as well as any weapon, and they won't be as quick or clean about it. And on the subject of life-threatening conditions, exposure. Emergency blankets and tarps are obviously available in any store with a sporting goods section, as are sources of fire, of which you should have at least two. Light, either a flashlight or a headlamp, which in my personal view is better, but again it never hurts to have both. And power. Also, piece of advice, don't store your electronics with the batteries in, unless you plan to make regular use of them. Otherwise, the current will leak over time and the connectors will erode. Again, ask me how I know. As well, you'll find more micro-conveniences, amenities, and gadgets like hair ties, carabiners, toothpicks, duct tape, hot glue sticks, lighters, bootlaces, paracord, and towels. Why a towel? Remember what I just said a moment ago about hygiene? Well, is it not just as important to keep your tools, of which weapons are also, gear and wounds clean? Alternatively, any foldable and, importantly, washable piece of fabric or cloth, be it a handkerchief, a scarf, a towel, or whatnot, is one of the most indispensable tools in an emergency, since this can serve as either storage, clothing, cover, even a weapon if you've a smooth stone handy. And of course, we can't talk about tools without also bringing up the classic Swiss Army knife and Leatherman. The great thing about these is that they pretty much embody the whole ethos of survival prepping to a T. They're small, portable, flexible, versatile, can be packed with as little or much as you're willing to carry on your person, are accessible at more or less any budget, and, much like the toothpicks, handkerchief, and paracord, are ultimately only limited in their range of use by the creativity of the user. And on that note, it should go without saying that, as a Homo sapien, information is by far and away your most valuable asset, apart from cooperative social bonding, obviously. But sadly, you can't purchase the latter, so the former will have to be where I round off this conversation. First, a warning. Don't intend to rely on any electronic forms of communication or information. As we've seen with Hurricanes Helene and Milton, these things are as much a liability as an asset in the worst of times. If you absolutely must use electronics, do yourself a service and invest in a hand crank generator. Not this dollar store piece of junk either. Something more robust like this. It will probably be the most expensive thing in your kit, but if it means retaining your link to civilization, then I'd think it's worth the plunge. Likewise, for things like these handheld ham radios, which are both chargeable with the generator and have much farther range and broader wealth of frequencies than your normal walkie-talkie set, and also a portable amount of silver or some other barterable material, just in case digital banking isn't an option for a while. Again, this is all on the pricier end of things. I had the fortune of getting mine while money was still somewhat reasonable, so do whatever's within your means. You can, of course, just get a hand-crank radio with a charge cord and a $20 set of radios from Walmart. And while I won't sit here and be the just-as-good guy, if it's a choice between that or nothing, I know which one I'd pick. But then, I'm not you, so use your good sense and make your own choices. But I just realized I jumped right over the subject of information. So, getting right back over to it, so far I've found no better or more concise pocket reference books than these. The ACW Compact Reference Book, and the official Pocket Edible Plant Survival Manual. Full disclosure, I don't know these guys. They've not paid me to say this. I just think these are some of the best pocket reference books available. They're cheap. They actually fit in your pocket. They're packed with all the stuff you'd actually need to know in an emergency, and no extra page filler bullshit. And of course, there's also plenty of general pocket reference books, atlases, dictionaries, and so forth. So like I said, locate your own personal needs, plan, and prepare accordingly. And last, but very certainly not least, we can't exactly leave this off without discussing the actual bag part of the emergency/disaster/survival bag now, can we? Although you'd think it'd be the simplest part of the process, and you'd be partially correct. However, it's not picking the bag that's the hard part. It's packing it such that you can have ready access to all the things you need to have access to precisely when you most need to have access to them. For instance, I've arranged my bag such that the towel, the clothes, and shovel are all at the bottom, the duct tape and glow sticks and whatnot on top, and the tourniquet strapped to the outside, because in the event that the world as you know it has ended and you need a tourniquet, you don't want to have to go digging through everything that's left to your name for it. Also, I chose it because the side and bottom bags are detachable, so there's freedom in just how much you have on your back at a given moment, which is where I just briefly want to throw in a mention of MOLLE bags. Honestly, it's my opinion that everyone should just have a few of these on standby, whether they're preppers or not, just because of how infinitely useful they are, and they're relatively cheap to boot, so what's not to like? You know what, as long as I'm digressing, I'll probably make a separate video on this at some point, as this one's already getting longer than I'd like. But just in case somebody's going to ask about what weapons I'd take in the apocalypse, let my most basic answer stand as such. Guns are for people. They're too loud and ammo's too precious to go dumping into every suspicious shadow. Use spears and clubs for the undead, and keep slings, bows, darts, boomerangs, and traps for hunting. Again, feel free to @ me in the comments if you think I'm misguided in that approach, or in anything else I say here for that matter. And with that, I think I'll finally wrap this one up. You know the drill. Like and subscribe, join the Members Club for early access to all future videos. Check out my books if you've coin and time to spare. And until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and remember, you can never think too much. You can only think badly. Peace be upon you.